Welcome to another fascinating episode of Psych with Sigmund. Today, we're going to delve into a captivating psychological concept that has significant implications for our understanding of human thought, emotion, and behavior: cryptomnesia. So, what is cryptomnesia? In simple terms, cryptomnesia refers to the phenomenon where a person forgets that they originally learned something from someone else, and instead believed they came up with the idea themselves. This can happen with memories, ideas, or even creative works. It's as if our brain takes an existing piece of information, files it away, and then later retrieves it without any recollection of where it came from. For instance, imagine you're in a meeting at work, and suddenly you have an epiphany, a brilliant solution to a problem that's been plaguing your team for weeks. You excitedly share your idea with your colleagues, only to be told that someone else had proposed the same solution months ago. You might feel embarrassed or even defensive, but what's happening here is a classic case of cryptomnesia. This concept is important in psychology because it highlights the complex and often unconscious nature of human memory and creativity. Our brains are wired to recognize patterns and make connections between seemingly unrelated pieces of information. However, this process can sometimes lead to errors in attribution, where we mistakenly believe that an idea or memory is our own when, in fact, it originated from someone else. The concept of cryptomnesia has its roots in the early 20th century, when psychologists like Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung began exploring the workings of the human unconscious. They discovered that our minds have a tendency to suppress or distort memories, especially those that are uncomfortable or threatening to our ego. This can lead to a phenomenon known as unconscious plagiarism, where we unwittingly borrow ideas from others without realizing it. From a theoretical perspective, cryptomnesia can be understood through the lens of cognitive psychology and social learning theory. Our brains are constantly processing information from our environment, including social interactions, media, and cultural norms. This information is then stored in our memory, often without our conscious awareness. When we're faced with a problem or challenge, our brain draws upon this stored information to generate solutions, sometimes without realizing where the ideas came from. Research has shown that cryptomnesia is more common than we might think. In one famous study, psychologist Elizabeth Loftus demonstrated how easily false memories can be implanted in people's minds. She showed participants a series of slides depicting a car accident and then asked them to describe what they had seen. Later, she asked the same participants to recall the details of the accident, but this time, she included a suggestion that a yield sign had been present at the scene. Remarkably, many participants remembered seeing the yield sign even though it wasn't actually there. Other studies have explored the role of social influence in cryptomnesia. For example, research has shown that when people are exposed to an idea or solution from someone they perceive as authoritative or expert, they're more likely to adopt that idea as their own without realizing it. This can happen in group settings, where individuals may feel pressured to conform to the opinions of others. So, how can understanding cryptomnesia help us in our everyday lives? For one, it encourages us to be more mindful of our sources and to properly credit others for their ideas. This is especially important in collaborative work environments or academic settings, where intellectual property and originality are highly valued. Additionally, recognizing the potential for cryptomnesia can help us develop a more nuanced understanding of creativity and innovation. By acknowledging that many of our ideas are built upon the work of others, we can foster a culture of humility and cooperation. In therapeutic contexts, addressing cryptomnesia can also be beneficial. For instance, cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, can help individuals become more aware of their thought patterns and identify potential instances of cryptomnesia. To illustrate this, consider the case of a writer who's struggling with feelings of inadequacy and plagiarism. Through CBT, she comes to realize that many of her ideas are actually inspired by her favorite authors, whom she's read extensively. By acknowledging this influence and properly crediting her sources, she's able to overcome her fears of not being original and develop a more authentic writing style. You might be surprised at how often your brain has borrowed from others without your conscious awareness. In fact, this phenomenon is so common that it's been observed in some of history's most influential thinkers and creatives. For example, Isaac Newton once said, "If I have seen further, it is by standing on the shoulders of giants." This quote highlights the importance of acknowledging the contributions of others to our own ideas and innovations. In conclusion, cryptomnesia is a fascinating psychological concept that reveals the complex and often unconscious nature of human memory and creativity. By understanding this phenomenon, we can develop greater self-awareness, improve our relationships with others, and foster a culture of humility and cooperation. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, may your ego find balance between pleasure and reality.